Lesson 137.
More about didomi.
So, Catherine, I told our listeners a few lessons ago that the word didomi in this book was doing two things. One thing that it was doing was helping us make sentences with an indirect object.
Mm-hmm.
But another thing it's doing is it's introducing us to the concept in general of me verbs. Verbs like didomi are what we call me verbs because the ending is mu iota, which is me. And so this is a whole class of Greek verbs that are called me verbs. They're also referred to as athematic verbs in the different Greek textbooks that are out there.
These verbs are different in their endings than the verbs that our listeners have already learned, which are called omega class verbs, because, well, the first person singular ends with omega.
That's right, Catherine. And another difference is that those verbs are called thematic verbs, whereas me verbs are called athematic verbs. And what it means is that if a verb is thematic, it means it has a special vowel between the stem and the ending.
Mm-hmm.
An athematic verb does not have a special vowel between the stem and the ending. I don't want to go too deep into this because it could overwhelm and confuse our listeners.
Mm-hmm.
However, I do want to just start poking around a little bit with me verbs and introducing them to our listeners in a very kind of elementary way that can make them take notice of the differences between thematic verbs and athematic verbs in a very simple and user-friendly kind of way.
That's particularly important for me verbs because they are very, very, very common verbs in Greek.
So, Catherine, even though going too deep into the differences between me verbs and all the other verbs, even though that could be overwhelming, there are a few basic things that we can say about me verbs that I think will prove helpful to our readers and listeners.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start with a quick review of the concept of stem plus ending. So here we have trech plus eis equals treches. That's the second person singular. It means you run or you are running, right?
Right.
So the tau, rho, epsilon key, that part of it is what we call the stem. And then the eis part, we call it the personal ending. Really, to be technical, that is a thematic vowel plus the personal ending, but it kind of gets all squished into one thing. So for the sake of simplicity, we call it the personal ending, even though it's technically not exactly the personal ending.
Right.
It's really the thematic vowel plus the personal ending. What I would like to say here, Catherine, is that the way stem and ending adds up for a verb like trecho is different than the way stem and ending adds up for a verb like didomi. The way we have an extra vowel in there called a thematic vowel, the way all that technical stuff adds up is different. So I just want to point out for our beginning students that there is a kind of a fundamental difference in the structure of a me verb versus the structure of a regular verb, such as trecho. And a few lessons from now, we'll actually talk more about that.